makes my heart beat like thunder? Who makes my temperature rise?
Elvis Presley's grandson, Chewy Thompson, has come forward with revelations that could change everything people thought they knew. What is this dark truth he's talking about? The details remain unclear, but the story is gaining attention fast. Join us as we explore Chewy Thompson's claims and what they might mean for the legacy of the king. Elvis Presley's last 24 hours. On August 15, 1977, Elvis Presley woke up later than most people would consider normal. At around 4 p.m., inside his famous Graceland home in Memphis, Tennessee, the king of rock and roll started what would unknowingly be the last full day of his life. Elvis had always lived on a night owl's schedule, often staying up all night and sleeping through most of the daylight hours, so this late start was nothing unusual for him. That afternoon, he spent time with his fiancée, Ginger Alden, and his 9-year-old daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, who was staying at Graceland. Lisa Marie often spent time at her father's home, and on this day, she was right next door in another bedroom. Elvis was in a good mood and enjoyed being surrounded by family. He had even asked Ginger more than once to move into Graceland permanently, but she had politely refused, explaining that it wasn't her way of doing things. Elvis respected her choice, but it was clear he wanted her close. Later that night, at around 10:30 p.m., Elvis and Ginger left Graceland to visit his dentist, Dr. Lester Hoffman. The reason for the late-night trip was a dental issue Elvis had been dealing with for some time. For Elvis, visiting doctors and dentists at unusual hours wasn't strange. He had personal medical staff, including his trusted physician, Dr. George Nicopolis, better known as Dr. Nick, and a nurse who could provide him with prescriptions whenever he needed them. Painkillers, sleeping pills, and other medications had become a regular part of his life by this point, and his medical team was always on call. After the appointment, they returned to Graceland in the early morning hours, following Elvis's typical schedule of being out and active, while most people were sleeping. At around 2:30 a.m. on August 16, 1977, Elvis drove back through the gates of Graceland. A fan happened to be outside and snapped what would become the last known photograph of him. In it, Elvis wore a bright blue shirt, a black jacket, and large black sunglasses, even though it was the middle of the night. Not long after returning, Elvis called Dr. Nick to request painkillers. His stepbrother, Ricky Stanley, was sent to pick them up from a 24-hour hospital pharmacy. Ricky returned with 6 dilaudid tablets, which Elvis took. Still feeling restless, Elvis phoned his cousin Billy Smith and Billy's wife, Jo, inviting them over to play racquetball on Graceland's indoor court. Even though it was late, this wasn't an unusual request from Elvis. The weather, however, wasn't cooperating. It had started to rain heavily. Elvis, in a moment that friends still talk about, looked up at the sky, raised his hands, and said, "Rain, be gone." Strangely, the rain stopped right after. The group stood in surprise before heading to the court to play. After a short racquetball session, the group moved to a piano near the court. Elvis sat down and played 2 of his favorite gospel songs. He then sang "Blue Eyes, Crying in the Rain," a song that now carries a haunting weight since it was the last one he ever performed. It was around 5 a.m. when Elvis and Ginger went back to his bedroom. He took a set of prescription medications that Dr. Nick had prepared to help him sleep. When he still couldn't rest, he took a second packet of pills later in the morning. By 8 a.m., Elvis was still wide awake. He called out for more medication, but his nurse, Tish Henley, was reluctant to give him more. Instead, she passed a smaller dose, 2 sleeping pills, through Aunt Delta, who lived at Graceland. This was the 3rd time Elvis had taken medication in just a few hours. Around 9:30 a.m., Elvis told Ginger he was going into the bathroom to read. He put on gold pajamas and carried with him a book titled The Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus by Frank Adams. Ginger told him not to fall asleep while in there, worried about his health. His final words to her were simple, "I won't." Hours later, at around 2 p.m., Ginger woke up and noticed Elvis wasn't beside her. At first, she thought nothing of it. She got dressed, did her makeup, and even called her mother for a short chat. Eventually, she went to look for him, and when she opened the bathroom door, she found Elvis lying on the floor. He was unresponsive. At first, Ginger thought he had fallen and hit his head, but it was quickly clear that something was very wrong. She called for help. Lisa Marie, still only a child, was taken out of the area right away to shield her from what was happening. One of the house staff, Al Strada, arrived quickly and tried to help. An ambulance from the Memphis Fire Department was called at 2:33 p.m. When paramedics arrived, they thought at first that the emergency was just another excited fan fainting at the gates of Graceland. They soon realized this was something far more serious. Elvis was rushed to Baptist Memorial Hospital. Despite every effort by the medical team, he was pronounced dead at 3:30 p.m. He was only 42 years old. Unsettling details surrounding his death. When the news broke that Elvis Presley had died, the official explanation came quickly. Doctors announced that the cause of death was a heart attack. At first, this seemed believable to many. Elvis was 42 years old, had gained a lot of weight in recent years, and was known to have health problems. But as more information came out, the story became far more complicated, raising questions that still have not been fully answered. The autopsy revealed that Elvis's heart was much larger than it should have been, almost twice the normal size. This condition, known as hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, can make the heart weak and more likely to fail suddenly. That finding matched the idea of a fatal heart attack. However, the toxicology report told another story. Multiple prescription drugs were found in Elvis's system, including strong painkillers, sedatives, and barbiturates. The amounts were high enough to be concerning. While none of the drugs alone were at deadly levels, the combination could have been dangerous, especially for someone with existing heart problems. The drugs in his system were the same kinds he had been using for years, often prescribed by his personal physician, Dr. George Nicopolis, known to everyone as Dr. Nick. Dr. Nick had been criticized before for the sheer quantity of medications he gave Elvis. In the year before Elvis died, Dr. Nick had reportedly written hundreds of prescriptions for thousands of pills, covering everything from sleeping aids to stimulants. Supporters claimed he was only trying to help Elvis function and perform, while critics believed his actions directly contributed to the singer's declining health. The funeral for Elvis Presley was surprisingly small and private, given his enormous fame. Only close friends, family members, and selected guests were allowed to attend the service inside Graceland. Fans gathered outside the gates in the thousands, but very few people were allowed to view Elvis's body. One detail that has fueled speculation for decades is the coffin itself. Elvis was buried in a copper-lined coffin that reportedly weighed around 900 pounds. Supporters of certain conspiracy theories claim that a coffin that heavy could not be explained by materials alone and may have been weighted for another reason, such as hiding the fact that it was empty. While there is no confirmed evidence to support that claim, the unusual detail has kept rumors alive. Another point of interest is how quickly the funeral was arranged. Elvis died on August 16, 1977, and the funeral took place just 2 days later, on August 18. For someone of his global status, this short timeline seemed unusual. Some have suggested that the speed was meant to limit public viewing and prevent any close examination of his body. One of the most chilling details from Elvis's last day is the report of strange phone calls he made. According to those close to him, Elvis made statements like, "I might not make it tonight," and added threats along the lines of, "If you tell people anything, I'll get you myself." These calls happened in the hours leading up to his death. It's not clear exactly who all of these calls were made to, and the people who received them have given only limited details. Some were friends, and some may have been members of his inner circle. The tone of the calls and the choice of words have left people wondering what Elvis meant. Was he predicting his own death? Was he aware of a threat against him? Or were these simply the words of a man in poor health and under the influence of medication? No one knows for certain. On the day Elvis died, Graceland was far from empty. Members of the Memphis Mafia, his loyal group of friends and associates, were present, along with family members like his father, Vernon Presley, who lived next door. Staff and security were also around. Despite this, Elvis spent his final hours completely alone in his bedroom and bathroom. It's unusual to think that with so many people nearby, no one checked on him for such a long time, especially since he had been taking large amounts of medication that morning. By the time Ginger Alden found him in the bathroom, hours had passed since anyone had last seen him alive. After his body was found, the flow of information was tightly controlled. Only certain people were allowed near the scene, and details about the exact timeline and circumstances were released slowly, if at all. This secrecy has fueled many theories about whether there was more to the story than what was officially reported. What happened next only added more fuel to the fire. The first cracks in the official story. In the hours and days after Elvis Presley's death was announced, the world was in shock. Fans grieved, the media rushed to cover the news, and official statements told a clear and final story. But it didn't take long before details began to surface that didn't seem to fit. These early cracks in the official version of events became the starting point for decades of speculation about whether Elvis had really died at all. One of the first and most talked about pieces of suspicious evidence came the very next day after Elvis's death. On August 17, 1977, a man who looked remarkably like Elvis reportedly purchased a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires, Argentina. The ticket was bought under the name John Burroughs, an alias Elvis was known to use in the past. The John Burroughs name wasn't just a random choice. It had been used by Elvis and his associates for years when he wanted to check into hotels or travel without drawing attention. The fact that it showed up again within 24 hours of his reported death struck some people as too big of a coincidence. Witnesses who claimed to see the man at the airport described him as wearing sunglasses and keeping a low profile. While there has never been confirmed proof that it was Elvis, the timing and the use of the alias made the story stick in the minds of those who believed he might have staged his own disappearance. Reports of seeing Elvis alive began almost immediately. Some fans claimed they had spotted him in Memphis just hours after his death was made public. Others said they saw him in the following days at gas stations, small stores, and even at airports. One of the earliest and most talked about claims came from a staff member at Graceland, who supposedly saw someone matching Elvis's appearance leaving the property the night before the funeral. Another story involved a woman who swore she saw Elvis in Kalamazoo, Michigan months later, a sighting that became so famous it was repeatedly mentioned in newspapers. Many of these early reports were dismissed by authorities and the media as mistaken identity or overactive imagination. After all, Elvis had millions of fans and people wanted to believe he was still alive. But some sightings stood out because they came from people who had known Elvis personally or had no reason to invent such a story. Those reports couldn't be ignored so easily, and they helped keep the rumors alive. Looking closely at the timeline of Elvis's final hours also raises questions. According to the official account, Ginger Alden last saw Elvis alive at around 9:30 a.m. on August 16th, when he told her he was going into the bathroom. She didn't check on him again until about 2 p.m., when she found him unresponsive. This gap of more than 4 hours has led some to wonder why no one else in the house checked in on him, especially since he had been taking multiple rounds of prescription medication since the early morning. With staff, security, and family all nearby, it seemed unusual that Elvis could be alone for that long without anyone making sure he was all right. There are also questions about the exact quantities of medication he took and who supplied it. Dr. Nick had reportedly prepared the initial packets of pills, but the third round was given to him reluctantly by his nurse through Aunt Delta. Some believe the amounts recorded don't match the reality of how much medication he may have had access to that morning. Others suggest that certain details about the drugs were deliberately kept vague to protect people from legal trouble. Even within the Memphis Mafia and family members, small differences in recollections have been noted over the years. In some versions of the story, Elvis was found much earlier than officially stated. In others, certain visitors or phone calls from that day are left out completely. While these could simply be the result of stress and confusion, they've been enough for conspiracy theorists to say the truth about what happened that day may be very different from what the public was told. Bob Joyce enters the story. In the years following Elvis Presley's death, countless people claimed to have seen the king alive. Most of these claims faded over time, but one man has remained at the center of serious speculation: Bob Joyce. His name might not mean much to someone outside of Elvis conspiracy circles, but within them, he is one of the most talked about figures. The reason is simple. Many believe that Bob Joyce is actually Elvis Presley living under a new identity. Bob Joyce is a gospel singer and preacher based in Arkansas. He leads a church congregation and is known for his deep religious commitment, speaking often about his faith and the importance of living a spiritual life. He began to appear publicly several years after Elvis's death in 1977, which is one of the first things that caught people's attention. There is no clear public record of him before that time. What makes him especially interesting to Elvis fans is how little is known about his life before he became a preacher. There are no widely available photos of him from earlier years, and his background details are limited. To some, this absence is suspicious. They argue that someone could live quietly for years if they were intentionally avoiding public attention, which fits the theory that Elvis might have been hiding in plain sight. The main reason Bob Joyce draws so much attention is his appearance. Fans have compared photos of him to images of Elvis in his later years, and the similarities are striking. Both have the same strong jawline, the same shape of eyes, and even a similar smile. One detail that people often point to is the small gap in the teeth, a feature Elvis had before getting a dental cap when he was younger. Bob Joyce has a similar gap, and for fans, this is more than a coincidence. Online, side-by-side photo comparisons are common. Supporters of the theory highlight how the bone structure matches, how their eyebrows arch the same way, and how even their facial expressions can look identical. Critics say these comparisons are subjective and can be influenced by lighting, camera angles, or simply the power of suggestion. But for many believers, the resemblance is too close to ignore. If the looks are convincing, the voice is even more so. When Bob Joyce sings, his tone and style are eerily similar to Elvis Presley's. He has a deep, rich voice with the same kind of control and emotional delivery that Elvis was known for. Clips of Bob Joyce performing gospel songs have been shared widely online, often with comments from listeners saying they felt like they were hearing Elvis himself. He even uses some of the same vocal inflections and phrasing patterns that Elvis favored. For some fans, hearing him sing is enough to convince them that Elvis never left. This vocal similarity has fueled countless videos, social media posts, and interviews where people dissect the sound of his singing. Supporters believe no one could so perfectly match Elvis's voice unless they were Elvis. Skeptics argue that talented impersonators exist and that Bob could simply be one of them. Adding to the intrigue are a few moments that conspiracy believers describe as slip-ups. In one instance, Bob Joyce reportedly referred to himself as Elvis during a conversation, then quickly corrected himself and laughed it off. While most people in the room may have taken it as a joke, some saw it as an unguarded moment revealing the truth. In other situations, he has avoided answering certain questions directly. When people have asked him point-blank if he is Elvis, his responses have been careful, often steering the conversation toward his work in ministry or his message of faith. This avoidance has only made some followers more certain that he has something to hide. The theory gains even more fuel from reported connections between Bob Joyce and people from Elvis's life. There have been claims that Bob was seen spending time with one of Elvis's earliest girlfriends. While no photos have been made public to confirm this, the rumor has circulated widely among conspiracy supporters. Another connection came when Bob Joyce was reportedly spotted at the funeral of Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's daughter. His presence there, whether confirmed or not, has been a major talking point. For believers, it's exactly the kind of event Elvis might quietly attend to pay his respects without revealing his identity. Bob has also allegedly been seen at Graceland on Christmas night, another occasion deeply tied to Elvis's memory. These reported sightings link him to places and people that would be important to Elvis, which strengthens the theory in the minds of those who already believe. Bob Joyce has addressed the rumors, but his answers have done little to settle the debate. In one public statement, he said, "I am Bob Joyce and always will be." He has not, however, clearly said the words, "I am not Elvis Presley." For some, this deliberate choice of words is telling. He has also stressed that he is not trying to gain fame or money from the rumors. In his statements, Bob has described living modestly, saying he and his wife drive older cars and live in a simple home. He insists his focus is on preaching the gospel and helping people, not on building a personal brand or cashing in on celebrity. The Bob Joyce theory has become one of the most persistent and detailed claims in the world of Elvis conspiracy stories, and what comes next in this tale only makes it stranger. Chewy Thompson's revelation. Chewy Thompson is not a household name, but within Elvis conspiracy circles, he has become an important figure. He presents himself as Elvis Presley's grandson through what he claims is an unacknowledged family line. According to Chewy, this connection was kept private for decades because of complicated family relationships and the need to avoid public attention. He has shared stories that he says come directly from family members, details that are not part of the official Presley history. These stories often touch on private moments, old family dynamics, and behind-the-scenes truths about Elvis's life. Whether people believe him or not, Chewy's accounts have been widely discussed among those who think Elvis didn't die in 1977. Chewy's main claim is that Elvis faked his own death, not simply to retire from fame, but to escape dangerous circumstances. He suggests that in the final years of Elvis's public career, there were serious threats to his safety. According to Chewy, these threats may have come from powerful people connected to the entertainment industry and possibly other areas of influence. He says Elvis felt trapped, unable to live a normal life, and that the pressure, combined with constant public exposure, left him in fear. Chewy hints that Elvis had private conversations with trusted friends and family where he made it clear that he could not go on living in the spotlight. In this version of events, the staged death was a carefully planned escape, giving him the freedom to live quietly without fear of being targeted. Chewy also connects this idea directly to the modern-day figure of Bob Joyce, suggesting that Elvis has been living under that identity for years. He says the similarities between Elvis and Bob is no coincidence, but part of a long-term plan to remain hidden while still sharing music and faith with a smaller, more private audience. Chewy doesn't claim to have a single piece of proof that settles the matter. Instead, he points to a combination of details that, when put together, he says make a convincing case. One of the things he cites is the number of sightings of Elvis in the days, months, and even years after August 1977. These include claims from people who knew Elvis personally and were certain they had seen him alive. He also highlights anomalies surrounding Elvis's funeral. For example, the unusually heavy copper-lined coffin, the quick turnaround between his death and burial, and the small number of people allowed to view the body. Chewy suggests these decisions were intentional, designed to limit scrutiny and prevent anyone from noticing that the man in the coffin might not have been Elvis at all. Of course, one of Chewy's biggest points is the physical and vocal similarity between Elvis and Bob Joyce. He refers to side-by-side photos, video clips of Bob singing, and the mannerisms that match Elvis's. In his view, these similarities are too exact to be explained by chance. Whether Chewy's claims are seen as groundbreaking revelations or just another chapter in the long history of Elvis conspiracy theories, they've certainly kept the discussion alive. And soon the story would take an even more surprising turn. Fuel for the fire. One of the most unusual moments that sparked new life into the Elvis is alive theories happened in a very unexpected place, a popular Christmas movie called Home Alone. In one scene at the airport, eagle-eyed fans noticed a man in the background who looked a lot like an older Elvis Presley. The man had similar hair, facial features, and even the way he moved. This brief glimpse caught the attention of conspiracy theorists immediately. The idea that Elvis might have been quietly living under the radar somewhere, even appearing in a major Hollywood movie without anyone noticing, fascinated many. The clip went viral on social media and YouTube, with fans dissecting every frame to argue that it was indeed Elvis. For many, it was proof that the king hadn't disappeared, but was still around, blending in with everyday life. Another strange element that adds fuel to the fire involves handwriting analysis. Over the years, some people have studied signatures supposedly from Elvis after 1977, comparing them to the ones from before his death. They noticed differences in style, letter formation, and overall handwriting flow. Some experts claim these differences are clear signs that the signatures were forged, or at least not from Elvis himself. They argue that the changes are too big to be explained by normal variations in a person's handwriting over time. These findings have been used by believers to suggest that someone was signing documents or autographs in Elvis's name after he had already faked his death. However, other handwriting analysts disagree. They say that handwriting can change naturally because of age, health, or even mood. They point out that stress, medication, or injury could cause a person to write differently. So, the debate continues. and experts remain divided on whether handwriting proves anything at all about Elvis's death or survival. So why do these theories refuse to die, even after decades? A big part of it comes down to the emotional connection fans have with Elvis Presley. He wasn't just a singer or actor. He was a symbol of an era, a figure who changed music and culture forever. For many people, the idea that someone so beloved could be gone forever is too painful to accept. Believing Elvis is still alive allows fans to hold on to hope and keep his spirit alive in a very real way. It's a way to keep the king close, to believe that he escaped the pressures and troubles of fame and is living a peaceful life somewhere. Whether it's a glimpse in a movie, a disputed autograph, or just the lasting love of fans, the legend of Elvis Presley living in secret continues to grow. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more about surprising celebrity secrets and strange mysteries, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell.